Yo, yo! Welcome back, everybody, to the writing block. This is our fifth weekly update, which is kind of crazy to say, given that we've now had this channel for about a month. If you are new to the channel, please do consider subscribing to join our little community here of writers, and make sure to like the video. It really helps out the channel a ton. And so with kind of our little writing update for the week, I do want to first go over some kind of statistics for the week as it pertains to the amount of words that I wrote and how many writing sessions I had over the past week. So I had 6 writing sessions since our last weekly update. 5 of those were just standard writing sessions where I would kind of think of a scene in my head and basically just kind of see where it went, or use ChatGPT to give me a prompt and then kind of go from there. There was also a writing session that went a little bit differently from my previous ones, and this was entirely unplanned. And I'll talk about this in a second, but essentially I had an idea for like something like a novel, and at the time I was really excited about it, and I really just wanted to get all of my ideas out on the page. And so I basically just outlined for my writing session, and that actually went it went my full 30 minutes, and then I was still excited about the idea and I was kind of rolling a little bit, and so I just extended that out to 1 hour, and that was just kind of outlining, making bullet points of like details of the character, the world, the basic premise for the plot, so on and so forth. And so in those 6 writing sessions, all of those were 30 minutes except for the outlining one, which was a full hour. That equates to about 3 hours of writing this previous week, which is consistent with what I've been able to achieve in previous weeks. So I'm definitely happy to see that. And then overall, I wrote, and this includes the outlining session, 4,036 words, which is about just under 700 words per writing session, which is good. I don't know where it's supposed to be, right? Considering most of these are just 30-minute sessions, but that feels pretty good with, how new I am to this process, and I'm just gonna kind of roll with it. My lowest number of words per session, I think it was last Tuesday, was 409 words, and then the largest or the most amount of words that I put down on the page in the 30 minutes was 799, and that was actually this morning. And so now that I've kind of gone over the statistics, I'm moving on to the next section, which what were my goals for the week? So I had 2 goals for this week. One of them I did do, the other one not so much. So the first one was to just be consistent. I apologize. This has basically been my goal for the first, 5 weeks of this channel, just because this is a new habit that I'm trying to create, and I know that consistency is key, just in terms of consistency is what is going to get me to achieve kind of my short and long-term goals with writing. And so given that I did do 6 writing sessions over the past week, I would say that I met my goal of being consistent, and I'm also kind of happy to say that assuming I can be consistent for like 1 or 2 more weeks, I can probably move that off of my weekly goals. Just kind of assuming, right, that I've established the habit. Getting down and finding time to writing isn't actually, the barrier that is no longer a like primary barrier to me writing. And so I can kind of redirect my focus elsewhere. So I am very excited about that, as I'm sure a lot of you are, all are as well. My second writing goal for the week was to focus a little bit more on my scenes progressing a little bit. So one thing that I noticed in the previous week was that, I'll be describing a scene and it'll be kind of a slow burn, meaning, I reach the end of my writing session and the characters really haven't done anything, right? I've basically just described the scene, kind of introduced what the characters look like, had a couple, dialogue, instances of dialogue throughout, but the characters aren't actually doing anything in the in these scenes. And I would say overall, I wouldn't say I completely failed, because there was like 1 or 2 sessions where I did kind of emphasize that. However, one thing I did notice when I sat down to write this week is that that emphasis for the week really wasn't that salient for me, and I was instead like more interested in just like writing about whatever I was thinking about that particular day. And so there certainly were instances where it was like previous weeks, where basically I was just describing the scene, describing the characters. Nobody really did anything, but that even though that was the case, I was still pretty satisfied with those writing sessions, just because I think I was doing that a little bit more effectively, a little more tactfully. And so just seeing that little bit of progress was good, was reassuring, I should say. And then the other thing is, I was excited about writing those scenes and so on and so forth. And so I didn't want to force myself to like focus on something that I didn't really care about at the time. And so maybe that kind of comes back to picking a goal that, I wasn't really ready for. And so I'll say that I partially passed that goal for the week. Partially passed, partially failed. And so reflecting on the previous week, what went well for me? So there were quite a few things that I thought went well. The big one was thinking of that first idea for a novel. And if you saw my previous video from just earlier this week, I actually outlined my writing goals for the entire year, with the kind of big milestone being hopefully completing my first novel. And so having an idea for that was very exciting. If you're interested in that, definitely go check out that video. And I'll probably have another video should I decide to pursue that idea. I'll have an additional kind of video just describing the basic premise of that idea. However, just having that idea and really seeing it as something that like could definitely, like, I could flesh out enough to be an entire book, was something that was incredibly reassuring. It was super exciting, and I'm excited to kind of hopefully within the near future potentially pursuing that, just because I think it gives me a new goal, something fresh. And if my long-term goal is to excuse me, if my long-term goal is to kind of write novels, fiction novels in general, I feel like getting the first one out of the way is never a bad thing. And so that was something that was extremely excited. If you're interested in kind of my basic thoughts on that, check out the description in the link in the description below, where I actually have a publicly available Google Doc where I have all of my writing sessions, like what I write during my writing sessions, publicly available. And so if you just scroll down like a few days, you will see that in the prompt I say working out an idea for a novel that I had. Another thing that I thought was a good thing was I also tried out a little bit of horror. So I wrote a scene that was like a little bit more horror, which was something that I haven't tried previously. It was my very first time, and I thought that that actually went well, in that it was something that seemed pretty natural. I didn't find myself really like grasping at straws trying to figure out what would happen next, just because I am somebody who has always been kind of interested in like scary movies. And so I think just having that little background did help a lot. And I found that to be a lot more natural writing, as compared to, writing about dragons or writing about, fictitious worlds, even though I do have an extreme interest in those things. And that's actually what I read mostly, is just like kind of epic fantasy. So yeah, so that I thought that that was a win for the week, just knowing that, oh, I kind of dabbled in a new genre this week. That was something that was cool, and is something that I might actually continue to pursue in the future. And another idea I had related to that, and this is the last thing I'll say on this, is maybe even like doing a crossover, right? Knowing that kind of writing in the epic fantasy genre right now is something that's pretty difficult for me. Maybe doing like a crossover between like horror and fantasy, just because, I'm better at writing the horror, right? At least just a little bit more naturally, but then still getting to bring in some of those fantasy elements that I enjoy reading about so much. And then my last thing that I will note that did go well was I did write a scene that kind of was fantasy in nature, and it was the very first time ever that I wrote a scene fantasy wise that I thought went well, right? It actually kind of like made sense. I feel like I described things well. And so, having just kind of discussed how difficult it is for me to get in that mindset and find the correct tone when writing something that's like intended to be epic fantasy, kind of noting how hard that is for me. Just doing that, and it was a very simple story of like a scout, looking over the hill, seeing an army, and then kind of encountering some bandits, and then like fighting them with a sword, so on and so forth. So it was nothing crazy, nothing like mind blowing. And if I went back now, I would probably hate everything I wrote. But overall, good experience. And so I'm not going to overthink it. I'm not going to be hypercritical. And I'm going to kind of, be satisfied with that positive, warm, fuzzy feeling that I got from writing that scene. And so what did not go well this week? So there's kind of a big one here. So I believe it was 2 days ago at this point, I had the most brutal writing session I have ever had. It was just, the only way to describe it was it just being completely excruciating. Every single word was just painful, and that was actually the day where I wrote just 409 words in my 30-minute writing session. And I don't know what it was about that day. I think I woke up early. I was excited to write the scene. It was something that, I actually thought was unique and had a little bit of potential. But when I sat down, I don't know, I just did not have it that day. And as a result, because that was just so painful, the next day I actually took off, which then I think served me well. And that when I came back, that was the writing session that I had the largest number of words. And so I think that, even though that was something that was like horrible to go through, and I know is something that all writers do experience, I do think I kind of learned a little bit about myself in that when those days happen, that might be a signal at times to like maybe take a step back for a day and then come back a day later just so I can kind of refresh myself. And just kind of take a step back from the writing to get an alternative perspective, knowing, right, that not all days are going to be good like they have been going here early on, and that more bad days I'm sure are coming in the coming weeks. And so looking ahead a little bit, my goals for this week are pretty simple. So yes, right, I do want to be consistent this week, but I'm not going to mention that just because that has kind of been our goal every week for the past 4 weeks. And so instead what I want to do is I want to have my first goal be establishing a writing schedule. And so for those of you that don't know, I'm somebody who kind of works on an academic calendar, meaning that most of the winter break I've been off from my quote unquote office job. And so we're going back to work next week, which means all the craziness that is life is going to be hitting me head on. And so I want to create a writing schedule early on in the kind of process so that it's something that I can sustain even when I go back to work, life gets crazy, I have all these other demands that are kind of pulling on me. And so I think just having a schedule that I'm able to stick to is going to be really important just for me being able to consistently write and also keep up the channel, which is something that I do want to do despite, having to work the stereotypical 9 to 5. And so please be on the lookout for updates on that. I'll try to actually have a video talking about my writing schedule and how I plan to fit that in, working a 9 to 5. And so then the last kind of goal that I have for the week is it's either one or the other. I'm not sure why, but so either one, I want to continue to work on the outline that I created the previous week, and continue to elaborate on the plot a little bit, just to really kind of dig in a little bit deeper and see whether or not the idea that I had for a novel was something that I could potentially do, or if there's enough there to actually write a novel. The alternative, so the and or, is going to be to perhaps just focus on like writing a complete chapter. And this is just because I want to focus on writing an intro, kind of like I want to be able to write a plot start to finish, right? And one thing I've noticed, right, with a lot of, readings, right, and kind of just my reading that I do in my leisure time, is that yes, there's like an overall plot, but then also within each chapters, there's oftentimes a plot, a start, a middle, and then an end, kind of following that 3-act structure. And so I feel like that's something that I do want to work on, just kind of writing that, almost like functioning as like a short story, just so that I get practice, not just writing the intro scene or the opening to a chapter, but I'm instead able to also write a conflict in the chapter, and then hopefully a resolution. And so I'll do either one of those. I'm not going to hold myself to either or, in that I have to do this one or I have to do this one, because I just want to kind of see how I'm feeling in the moment. And so that is all that, those are my goals for the upcoming week. If you have writing goals for the upcoming week or the upcoming month, as we are in a new year now, new month now as well, January, please drop that down in the comment section below. I would love to hear from you. And then again, just don't forget to like and subscribe, because we would love to have you a part of our growing community here at The Writer's Block. And so with that being said, happy writing.